The national championship was just Monday night, but you guys know we're already looking ahead to 2025. We did our way too early top 25 rankings. Now it's time for some way too early playoff predictions. Yes, we're going to give you some playoff predictions. And again, it's called way too early for a reason. Our predictions will change, and they'll change a lot. In fact, let's look back at our way too early playoff predictions last season just to show you. And again, if you follow the channel, you know how much I change my predictions. So I did not have Michigan, and you see that at the 8 seed, I did not have them. I did not have Alabama in my actual playoff predictions when it rolled around to August. I didn't have Alabama or Michigan in there. I did have Ole Miss. I did have Texas. I did still have Boise State. Did not have Arizona. I think I had them 8-4, 7-5. Did not have Florida State. And then all these other teams on the right, Oregon, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Penn State, I did stick with all of those teams. But again, as you go through the offseason, you do more research on these teams, you learn more about who they've added, who they've lost. You look at more transfer portal additions and subtractions that you're going to get in the spring. And this evolves as the offseason goes along. So we made a lot of changes. And this just shows you, our way too early predictions, I would say, were worse than our actual preseason predictions. So keep that in mind. I think when we make these predictions, we really look a lot at the previous season, and we don't really get a full grasp of the changes and what these teams are going to look like in terms of better or worse. And so that's a big reason why I think, again, you see Florida State, you see Arizona. They finished really hot. Those were teams that I was not all that high on when it came to time to actually to do predictions. Alabama, same way. I had them going 9-3. I thought they were going to have the 1 seed coming off of the season before. So it's crazy how much these change. And I say that, again, to remind you that these predictions will change. They're called way too early for a reason. So let's get to it. We're going to have the Fiesta Bowl and Peach Bowl as semifinal bowl games this year. We'll have the Sugar Bowl, the Orange Bowl, the Rose Bowl, and the Cotton Bowl as quarterfinal matchups. All right, so let's jump into our number 1 seed. I've got Texas as the number 1 seed. I think Texas can do very similar to what they did last year. Again, looking at it early, I think they can maybe do 11-1 again, get to that point. And I think they win the SEC. Again, this is very early. Predictions may change, but right now, I think they're the front runners. I'm going to say Texas wins the SEC, and I'm going to say Penn State wins the Big Ten. They were my preseason number 1 team, way too early top 25 team, and I know a lot of you have not agreed with that, and I kind of doubt they'll stay at number 1, but they have a lot of pieces coming back. They have quarterback coming back, so that's what I went with. But I think this is a team that probably loses to Ohio State on the road. Again, looking at it now, and then maybe they beat them in a rematch of the Big Ten Championship, something like that. I could see happening there with Penn State. Oregon had kind of an easy schedule this past year. Oregon has a tougher schedule in 2025. So I'm looking at Penn State and Ohio State probably being the front runners in the Big Ten. Again, very early. And then we go to our next champion. Got to be a conference champion. We're going to go BYU. BYU wins the Big 12. I think BYU gets the number 3 seed. Could go 10-2 and still win the Big 12. The reason why I've got them at 3 instead of 4 is because my number 4 team is Clemson, and they play a really tough non-conference schedule. So I could see this Clemson team going, I'll say 9-3. Maybe they go 9-3, but they only lose 1 conference game, and they win the ACC championship. So I could see that playing out, and that's why I do have Clemson as the 4 seed behind BYU. If Clemson can take care of business in those non-conference games, then maybe Clemson's the 3, BYU's the 4. But right now, those are my preseason conference champions. We'll get to the group of 5 team in just a moment. Let's go to the at-large teams now. So at number 5, I'm going to go Ohio State. I think Ohio State maybe goes 11-1, and I said before, maybe loses to Penn State in the Big Ten Championship. This team's going to lose a lot, and I don't think they're going to be quite as good next season, but they still have a lot coming back, and I think they'll be good enough to navigate a schedule that's actually easier. So their schedule gets easier. Like I talked about, Oregon's schedule gets harder, and that's why I think Ohio State does wind up maybe in the Big Ten Championship. So then we go to number 6. We're going to go Tennessee. How about the Vols? They've got a favorable schedule once again. I think maybe they can get to the SEC Championship. They'll have Georgia at home this time, so that's a game maybe they could win. And maybe they're 11-1 or 10-2 going into that SEC championship, and that's enough to get them the 6th seed. So I think Tennessee gets in. And then we go to number 7. Going to go Oregon. So I do still think Oregon is a playoff team, but I don't think they're going to go undefeated. Looking at it right now, I think this is possibly, we're looking at those teams that I think are most likely to go 10-2, and you have to figure out which teams can get to 10-2. I think Oregon can do that. I don't think any 9-3 team will get in unless they win their conference. I just don't see that happening. So I think, yeah, Oregon probably gets in there. Maybe 10-2 finishes at number 7 in the rankings, or probably actually ranked higher, and might be ranked ahead of BYU and Clemson, because we're going to have the same kind of scenario that we had this past season. We're going to probably have teams that were ranked a little bit lower get those first round buys because they're conference champions, and maybe not because they're ranked in the top 4. And by the way, just quickly on the bowl matchup, so I think Texas winds up in the Sugar Bowl, Clemson winds up in the Orange Bowl, Penn State in the Rose Bowl, and BYU in the Cotton Bowl. So I do think those would be the bowls with these teams in those spots. So let's go to number 8 now, the Georgia Bulldogs. So this is one, I don't know. I don't know if Georgia's going to be able to pull it off or not. They have a lot of questions on their roster, but I trust Kirby Smart. I trust this defense. I think it'll be good. I think they'll make some strides offensively with Gunnar Stockton, or maybe they add a transfer quarterback. Again, it's way too early for a reason. We don't know what these rosters are going to look like, but it's hard to count out Georgia. I actually saw some way too early championship odds came out, and they were 4th. They had the 4th best odds to win the national championship, which seems kind of high to me, again, with all the question marks. But I think right now, I think Georgia probably finds a way to get there. Then we go to the number 9 team. That's Michigan. So I'm really high on Michigan. I like the way their schedule sets up. I think they can get to 10-2. And if they get to 10-2, I think they will be in the college football playoff. It's a team that finished the year with a lot of momentum. I think they carry that over into 2025. We'll see if Bryce Underwood maybe has a role, or maybe takes over that starting job at some point, because we know about his talent. Could he be a Trevor Lawrence type player for Michigan? Possibly. And I do think Michigan, right now, I think Michigan is able to get to the college football playoff, which means we've got 4 Big Ten teams in the top 9 seeds. So that is interesting. Let's go to our number 10 team, and that is South Carolina. I think the Gamecocks make a run to the college football playoff. I think they can get to 10-2. When you look at their schedule, I think it sets up pretty well, and I think they're able to get it done. They'll have Alabama at home this time. Ole Miss, I don't think it's going to be quite as good. That's a team that beat them last year. So yeah, I think South Carolina, they have a real shot to get there. And then at number 11, we're going to go Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame has a good season, not quite as good as this past year. Maybe it's a 10-2 type year for them, but I still think they are good enough to get there. A lot of question marks about them and what that roster is going to look like. So many questions, really, to be answered over the next few months. Once that portal opens up in the spring, we'll see if teams can fill those final spots. And then at number 12, I don't know a lot about the group of 5. I will admit that, but a team that kind of jumps out to me is UNLV. Dan Mullen takes over. They've already added some pieces in the transfer portal. Maybe UNLV wins the Mountain West. That's my prediction. Again, it's called way too early for a reason, but this is just kind of how I'm seeing it setting up as of right now. Once we get into these teams, do a little bit more research, find out exactly how much is coming back, where teams have weaknesses, and did they take advantage of the transfer portal and fill those spots. We'll really dissect these rosters, and I think have much better predictions. But looking at it right now, again, this is kind of what I'm expecting. Are we overreacting to the way teams finished this past season? Maybe with Michigan, maybe with South Carolina. Are those 2 teams that I'll do more research on and then change my mind on? I don't know. And again, it's very early, so we'll see. But those are my way too early playoff predictions. Would love to get your thoughts and your predictions. Let me know what you think about the college football playoff in 2025 down in the comments below.